Rod Cooper, Australian Institute of Noise. We've got another one of these kids keyboards. It's one of the famous franchise brands. Don't need to mention that. You might even pick up which one it is when I start playing around with part of the circuit here. Again, we've got surface mount. We're not using a soldering iron. I'm just trying to get it in on this little press button to your song. Okay, so there's the preset, and this is it, slightly altered. So this end of my clip lead is on one half of the crystal, so the crystal kind of looks like a little tin can. They call them the sardine tins when they're this shape, and that's mounted directly onto the PCB. So that is then following around onto what appears to be, I have to get the magnifying glass out on this one. Through the magnifying glass I could see I've got one part of the lead is on one half of the crystal that I just showed, and then this one is going to C4. Now I don't know if that's cap 4, because I don't see any R for resistors. Oh no, there's one there. So there are a few resistors, so that must be a capacitor, and this is the effect that I can get out of it. So it seems like I've got to get one of the presets working before... this is the whole way of bending these days with these surface mount devices. I'm just fiddling for hours. I'll be here all afternoon doing this. Well, that's really interesting because that's a slowed down. That was a classic slowed down resistor effect. That really deep sound. And a lot of it's actually sped up. So I'm speeding up the clock resistor just by touching it and going through half of the crystal. But it's got a real reset crash problem. That's the keyboard. So this is like a rapid play piece, this one. There, so I've heard that tone at the end there, and I think that's the crash tone. So even running along the top of C4, because it's like a little square thing that's got little solder pads each side. Let's play a song. And I'm touching the solder pads. Ah, did you hear that? It was said test. Well, that's the first time I've ever heard that on a chip, so obviously there's a lot of little sounds and recordings that are stored on a chip. So that's just gone into a free-fall loop now. It's just repeating the start of a preset over and over, and it's stuck on a little cycle. Ooh, it's come back on again. So that was like a little short that I did then. And it comes back on again. Okay, so if I just use one of those, then I'm not shorting across these two points there. I'm only just using one end of it. Wow, this is going off. just let that go now. That sounds like a starve sound, like the resistor is really going for it. What happens is that the saliva that I put on there might just be drying, and that can sometimes change the resistance on the surface of the solder as it dries. Because we're at about 27 degrees here today. So see, there you go, there's another little bend. I'm touching the other end of the crystal. So if I touch the crystal there, so it shorts out. Well, there's some nice background noise there, but it's very quiet. Basically what you can hear the circuit. I'm very happy with this actually. I had abandoned this circuit for a while. Now that I've come back just using the clip leads and not worrying about whether or not I can change it with soldering, I'm just working on this one tiny little area and I'm getting all this variation out of that one tiny little area. Oh, there we go. There's a bit of circuit noise there, it's nice. Might have to reset. Wow. So sometimes they can kind of get started and then it sets off this chain reaction and you just get these stream bends where it will just go on for ages like this. Oh, see, I love that sort of thing. That sounds like it's screaming. You'd never be able to set a switch onto this because it's just such a small area. So it's almost like a moment. Oh. It's almost like a momentary switch. I forget what the Reed Ghazala would call that. Is that there's a certain type of bend. It's not X to 1 and it's not a loop and it's not a stream. It's kind of like a chance trigger thing. No, it's crashed. So you can play around on one little tiny area for hours. And you think, I'm really getting to know this tiny little component here and where I can get this sound out of it. And 2 millimeters along and get another sound out of it, but it doesn't always work. No, it's just the flow of electrons you're mucking around with. But the direction that they flow in and the sequence of components that the electrons flow into is what gives you your bends. Normally circuits are made to direct the flow of electrons through very specific ways and specific routes on the circuit, but with bending that's what you're doing. You're doing crosstown traffic, taking the side roads. So this is a totally different sound again. I don't know what's happening here. It's really weird. So if I take everything off, it just does it by itself. It's another thing with bending. It's very unpredictable. So you're just making direct contact with the metal. The clip leads are acting like a metal probe, hitting the component directly, rerouting the flow of electrons. See, it's kind of gone now. I don't know what's happening. It's doing its own thing. Yeah, that's just a little bit of feedback because I've still got a speaker attached. So there's the speaker. And I've soldered. I keep saying welding because I've done welding for 30 years. I've only been soldering for 15 years. You can hear that feedbacky sound. It's because I've got an output coming straight off the speaker terminals into the amp, so you get a little bit of microphonic action because the speaker's a transducer and it'll work as a microphone as well as a speaker. Input, output. It's all one mind.